So at this point, we've sent the college coaches our profile, our video, our schedule, our academic report, and maybe we haven't heard back, or we haven't heard back in a while. The one thing I wanted to talk to you about is looking at it through the eyes of the college coach and understanding a little bit better the day-to-day life of a college coach. Where you're at in the high school season, the beginning of April, where you're just getting started in your season, the colleges are up and running, but that creates its own certain challenges. You have to remember, these college coaches, they don't have a separate scouting staff like pro baseball. So the head coach and the assistant coaches, not only are they running the day-to-day operations of their team, they're also responsible for all the recruiting for all the future players, whether that's 2022, 23, 24, 25 even. And their timeline is a lot different. The recruiting calendar is published online as far as dark times and open time, so that's pretty clear cut. But from a human nature standpoint, when those guys come back on campus, let's say early January, and they start practicing, the coaches have a lot more time to still communicate with recruits back and forth. But as they get into the season, don't forget, they're baseball people. Most of the college baseball coaches are baseball lifers, and they love the game, and their season is definitely short. Similar to, how a high school player feels like his season is short. So when that college coach, he's on his Florida trip, or they may have flights to take, or they may be taking bus trips, a lot goes into moving around 35 bodies, not just playing the baseball game, getting checked into hotels, team dinners, things can go wrong with travel, weather, constant changes. So the reason we bring that up is because here I am, the player, wondering why I haven't heard back from a coach in 3 or 4 days after I've emailed them. So understanding through the eyes of that college coach what goes on. Now, the college coaches are recruiting all year. They have their depth charts. They are communicating with players. They're emailing players. Obviously, you're not going to see college coaches out much during their season recruiting, although they can. In certain instances, you will see a coach go to see a player. A lot of times it's a player that's already committed to their college, or it's maybe one of their top recruits. But obviously, you're going to see those college coaches a lot more in the summer. But I think just understanding that college coach is in season just like you are, and he has his normal recruiting along with the day-to-day life of everything that goes into being a college coach, I think can help you understand the timeline a little bit better. And some of you players that are watching this have been in that situation where you've emailed the coach and you haven't heard anything, and it may have taken 3 weeks, but you get a response, but it's a very positive response. I think if this helps realize that a college coach may get 100 to 200 emails a day from players, it doesn't necessarily mean they have the time to sit down and look at them one at a time as they come in. We just say that so it may help you understand the timing a little bit better. It may not give you more patience, but it may just give you a little bit more perspective on what's going on with the college coaches and their in-season schedule. So we've gone through a lot of these different videos as far as how to stand out as a recruit, how to make yourself a better player. So obviously these coaches are going to want to recruit the best players. That's a generic statement, but it's a true statement. Okay, so what if you're not a superstar player? How can you get the attention of these coaches? Because college coaches will tell you, especially let's say the D1 coaches that have 35 guys on the roster, not every guy is a stud pitcher. Not every guy is a cleanup hitter. Not every guy that gets recruited did they maybe even envision being a starting player. Sometimes a college coach will recruit a player knowing he's going to be a backup catcher, knowing he's a third-string catcher. So when you're a position player or a pitcher and you're going through this process, at this point, if you've watched our series of videos, you know what will spike you on the metrics chart. So let's just say you're an average high school player, however you want to define average to be. In this case, we're going to say not getting overly recruited just based off your abilities. How do you separate yourself in the eyes of the college coach? I think honesty is probably the most important thing when it comes to dealing with these coaches, because you have to understand most of these coaches know each other. So if I'm talking to a coach from a certain school and he asks me what other colleges I'm talking to, and I tell him or don't tell him, he probably knows before he asks in a lot of instances because he's already talked to the other coaches. Now, is that a deal breaker type thing? Not necessarily, but I think being honest with a coach, coaches will often ask you, what other schools have you talked to? Sometimes a player may feel insecure or he may feel bad that he hasn't talked to any other schools. So he wants to make himself look better, so he embellishes a little bit. And now you may basically have just lied to that coach because you're really not talking to any other coaches in the way that we view talking to coaches as far as a recruiting standpoint. There's do's and don'ts with that also. Most college coaches are going to view you for your ability. When it comes to responding to coaches, that's a big one. If a coach asks you for something, video, transcript, schedule, get right back to them. That's a good way. Letting a coach know that you're genuinely interested in his school, or if that's your number one choice, or it may be the situation where, hey, coach, if I get into your school and you have a roster spot for me, I'm going to take it. That can definitely change how you're viewed by that college coach. Again, we're not talking about 80 miles an hour versus 90 miles an hour here. We're talking about our average type player. Because what I hear when I talk with college coaches, especially the D2 and the D3 level, they get a ton of casual interest from players. I have coaches that say, I'll get an email from a player, coach, this is who I am. I'm very interested in your school. The coach writes back positively and never hears back from the player. So college coaches do have to weed through a lot of casual interest. So when you can come to a coach and say things like, coach, I think I can, based on your school's academic profile, here's my transcript. I've done some research. I think I can get in. Letting the coach know you've come to terms with the tuition. Coach, I think the tuition is affordable, especially certain schools like we've talked about WPI and MIT and RPI. Those are primarily engineering schools. Letting a coach know you're going to major in engineering, I think that kind of lets the coach know that you're probably going to wind up at one of those, if not top engineering schools, an engineering school. Because you have to look at it, again, through the eyes of the college coach. If I look at it through the eyes of myself as the player and I emailed 100 schools, I'm going to pick the best scenario for me. But college coaches know, for the most part, that you're emailing a ton of schools. So that coach looks at it as the opposite. I have a 1 in 100 chance of getting this player, or a 1 in 200 chance of getting this player. And if he feels like, either because of grades or because of personality, or that you're looking for, you've told him you're looking for a big school, or it says in your profile you're looking for a big school, and he knows he's a small school, they may tend to move in other directions just because that coach is starting to figure out that it's probably not a fit. So I think if you really do feel the school is a fit and you let the coach know that, that can really help you out. Now, again, if it's not your number one choice, don't say that. But if you've really come up with a school, or if you can honestly say to a college coach, if you offer me a roster spot, I'm going to take it, then I think that definitely puts you in a different category with those college coaches. If you enjoyed the video, please let us know by leaving a like. If you have a question you'd like answered, please leave it below in the comment section. If you want to catch more of this content, make sure you follow or subscribe so you don't miss out on anything. Thank you. See you next week.